Dwarves, our short kings and queens we need. Dwarves are one of the most popular races in fantasy, right after elves. Shame really. But dwarves never saw the same level of diversity as elves did. Besides high, dark, wood and whatever elves, there are countless of other types of elves in fantasy. If a world builder wants to get quirky, they work on elves, making them into something familiar with elves, but a new flavor and skin in some way or form. Dwarves don't have that. There are 3 different kinds of dwarves in fantasy at best. The normal dwarves everyone has, the evil dark dwarves, and sometimes there are almost hobbit-like hill dwarves. Beyond these archetypes, dwarves seem like a taboo to touch upon. No possibility for change beyond their known style. In this video, I'll show you how to work within or without the rigid frames that are dwarves in fantasy world building. But in the end, the dwarves you create for your setting will become something for your own, so long as you work with the 3 different themes you can work around with as much as you want. The idea of dwarves in mythology is ancient. Dwarves are prevalent both in Nordic and Germanic mythology, but originally dwarves were very diverse and quite vague in their descriptions. Mythology and fairy tales refer to many different creatures when talking about dwarves, from gnomes over fae, kobolds and other creatures. I hope elf fans or dwarf enjoyers won't suffer from a heart attack over this, but for a time, dwarves and elves were quite interchangeably used. The dwarves' identity as the dwarves that became the Tolkien-esque dwarves were forged within the Edda, however, and the Song of Nibelung. The former brings us to our first theme: craftsmanship, forging, ingenuity, creation in general. I think nothing goes hand in hand more than dwarves, forging and crafting. I can't think of dwarves that can't create, that can't forge. Even the most borderline cases of dwarves I know, Dwemer in Elder Scrolls, have craftsmanship as their core theme. Dwarves are known to build the most legendary weapons, to create the sturdiest of armors, and to build glorious fortresses deep within the mountains. The association with craftsmanship was present within the Edda. The most famous dwarven smiths might be the sons of Ivaldi, and as well as Brokre and Eitri. I butchered their names probably, who cares? The former of which created the legendary spear of Odin, Gungnir, and the latter brothers forged Thor's famous hammer Mjolnir. Besides them, there are countless other stories of dwarves and creation within the Edda, and usually they include some form of bet, which brings us to our second theme for dwarves: money, wealth, but also untold greed. As much as dwarves are famous for their craftsmanship, they are known for their amassed wealth. No matter where you look, the dwarves' endless mining brought them untold amounts of mineral wealth that made them greedy. Dwarves are portrayed as stingy, as money hoarders, as bad as the dragons that take over their holds eventually. They mine and dig in the name of gaining wealth until they doom themselves. Dwarves being wealthy and greedy is as ancient as dwarves having beards. In the Song of Nibelung, there was the treasure with the same name. Untold amounts of wealth that belonged to the dwarven king with the same name. One day, the king perished, leaving 2 sons behind who struggled to succeed both kingship and his wealth. The warrior Siegfried came around and was asked to help them resolve their succession crises. In the end, however, neither party was content with the ruling of Siegfried, so they attacked him before being killed in the struggle. Siegfried took the treasure for himself and put another dwarf in place to protect it, Alberich, who by the way had a Tarnkappe, which made him invisible, which is the original cloak of elvenkind, worn by a dwarf. These themes of dwarven wealth can be seen in many more fantasy settings, even beyond Tolkien. But like in Tolkien's stories, or the Song of Nibelung, this wealth usually spells their doom. Doom, downfall, societal decay. While mythological dwarves usually were associated with sickness and diseases, as they were told to infect those who wronged them, In the epic sagas and songs, as well as fantasy, dwarves are the ones who get doomed instead. In the Edda, the doom is still relatively tame. Some get kicked around by Thor like a ragdoll, others get turned into stone because Thor didn't want them as his son-in-law, while again others lose bets or get their treasure extorted, especially when Loki is involved. The Nibelung song shows you the dwarf king's son who quarreled over their father's inheritance, and they were both killed. And then there are countless examples in fantasy, from the dwarves of Erebor or Khazad-dûm, over the Dwemer dwarves in the Elder Scrolls. The Warhammer dwarves have a rotten empire they can't maintain anymore, or the dwarves in all of the Dungeons and Dragons settings I can think of, or even in the Pathfinder setting. They all share a certain theme of downfall, of a once great people that lost their holds to greed, infighting, or an outside threat, most commonly orcs. That's a theme they share with their mythological brothers, by the way. The elves have that too. If you want, check out my video about elves and world building to learn more about them. There are many more themes for dwarves, but they usually turn into ridiculousness, like drinking, or some form of proudness over their beard grooming. But with these three, you can make dwarves into whatever you like, while still maintaining the vibe of dwarves. From all the different dwarves out there in fantasy fiction, there are two that might just be my favorite. Both are from the same of the three big archetypes of dwarves, which is the dark and evil dwarves. On the one hand, the Duergar, one of the few pieces within the Forgotten Realms lore I really enjoy. On the other hand, the dark iron dwarves from the Warcraft setting, which has many of the same issues as the Forgotten Realms lore, but their dwarves are just perfect. In both cases, they are reclusive, keeping within their own confines. In both cases, they are formerly enslaved people that are now freed from their holds of their former overlords. They are crafters and schemers, even more stubborn and crass-natured than their normal dwarf counterparts. And their smith goods, machines and whatnot are colorless, form over function being their motto. Their wealth is displayed within their large, deep, cavernous architecture, their gigantic machinery, instead of gold and glamour. Their society is rigid, authoritarian, keeping up their role as the evil dwarves pretty well, even after they were freed. I favor this mirror of dwarven society over the elven counterparts of drow and dark elves, for example. The Duergar and the dark iron dwarves have a certain edginess to them that isn't over the top, and rather based within their natural environment they find themselves in, and the events they had to deal with throughout history. Originally, the Duergar already were made out of the confines of the original dwarves and formed into something else, yet distinctly dwarven. You can achieve that too. They don't have to live on the ground even. What about sky dwarves, who live on clouds instead of giants? Anyways, that's it for today's video. I hope you liked it. If so, leave a like and subscribe, and tell me about the dwarves in your setting in the comments. See ya!